one of the residents spoke to the fact they're on Ivywood and had a P factor of 1.2 for essentially because their road's being repaved.
It's because the actual drain is being removed and replaced here.
Correct.
And so the presentation from the Ingham County Drain Commission office, I asked them to build out their presentation from August, and it actually details the diameter drain that pre-existed the project and then the replacement drain pipe.
And it was reported by the resident, who was an engineer, that the drain pipe was the same.
Yeah, the diameter could have been the same. I just got that presentation today.
Okay.
But the Drain Commission office will present next, and they will talk about scope of the project. Again, that's where the analogy came in about home repairs. There's a broad discretion in terms of scope, and the Drain office chose this scope and the cost as a result of the scope of the project, right? Every drain pipe and all of the work that was done with the pond and then the culvert under Grand River Avenue, every single item has a price tag, and that's how it's escalated to the current cost.
I understand that, but the idea that because the road is being improved and we're committed to our residents to replacing all 155 miles of roads, this one just got done sooner, to up them to a 1.2 seems highly unfair to me, for one thing. The other question I have is this P factor for the ponds. Can we discuss that right now?
Yeah.
Is is Brian here from GEI?
I believe so, yeah. Brian, you want to come up real quick?
And I asked you to come up because I understand from Dan you've got engineering and assessing background. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go through the presentation on the work that's done to give some more detail for the residents.
But specifically, I want to ask you about the 1.4 rating we've given the ponds.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the assessing and whatnot. So
okay.
I've only been involved in the project since the beginning. So.
But based on what you know about assessing and engineering, does the 1.5 ratio for the ponds seem to be an appropriate number, in your opinion?
I don't think I should answer that.
Excuse me?
You haven't been called on. Please sit down.
I just know from having dealt with the ponds since 2013 that this issue with the ponds, the flooding that's taking place, because they basically take everyone's water in all those subdivisions. It's a regional detention system that happens to be on their property. So had that not be in there, all these subdivisions going in would have had to put in their own detention systems. So this is a regional detention system on their property. I just know the amount of planning that they have had over the years, knowing that this is coming down the pipeline in order to pay for the project. That's just my knowledge of it. They know that is going to be an expensive assessment towards them, and I know that they have been planning that for a long time. I've been to several of their annual meetings. We gave a scope meeting, which we talked to their board and went through some approximate costs, and I just know that they've planned that for a long time.
The reason I ask is this is on private property. This primary benefit of the pond being redone, the new paths, the new docks is right there on this private property. In fact, I asked the pond's attorney to open up the paths to the community, since the community's paying for this work, and twice was told that they had decided no, they didn't want to have any of the community on their sidewalk. So they're extremely exclusive in their use of that. Yet they're paying $227,000 out of a $6 million, almost $7 million bill.
I think it's closer to 450 because they have two properties that are relatively the same size.
Okay, so rather than 3% there.
It's close to $500,000 or whatever, yeah.
Yet they are the primary beneficiary of this. So I just wonder if you had an opinion on that fee factor. And it sounds like you're not free to share that with us, but
yeah,
I don't think the 1.4 is a good starting point here, or a good ending up point for that factor. Thank you.
Other board members, do you have any questions?
Just to speak to Treasurer Deshane's question, though, we are having an internal meeting to talk about the p-values on Thursday, so we will discuss that. There is a lot of work that was done back last fall before I was on staff that arrived at that 1.4, or that 40% factor for the increase in the assessment based on proximity. to the pond and the work that occurred in the pond. But we're revisiting that. I did not have time in the 1 month before the March 15th meeting to revisit that before we set the role under Resolution 3. So,
Thank you for that.
but just so everybody understands what that will mean, if you increase the p-value for any, let's say any parcel within it, within the drain district, what that will mean is the assessment roll will go down for all the other parcels and it'll go up for that parcel. The dollar figure that it'll go up for the parcel that you increase the p-value assessment for will be the amount that's spread across the other parcels relative to their C value, their A value, and their P value, right? So it just shifts that cost, dollar for dollar, over the other parcels. And there's 335. However, a couple of the parcels, several of the parcels are zeroed out, which we previously discussed.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. So you're talking about the assessment? You're taking questions about the assessment? Is that
Yes, I
correct?
can.
Okay. One of the residents asked about and I think maybe you've addressed this already by talking about having an internal discussion, if residents were sent a logical reason for an increase in the assessment.
Yeah, so the notice that is received, I mean, it would take in the hours required to write 335 parcels, a unique description explaining the formulas involved relative to their parcel uniquely is a monumental task. I would need a very sizable budget to hire temporary staff or a consultant to do that. The notice that they received details the assessment amount, and the assessment is published and put on file in the clerk's office and in my department, and residents can come in and discuss it. It's also publicly available in the packet, obviously, and it was in the March 15th packet preceding the board's adoption of Resolution 3, which created this second perspective role, right? We learned from the public input from the first one, made changes to it, and then reset it for public input. So we're still going through that public input process. I think some of the frustration is coming from the fact that, and I was on the board at this time, the first I had heard about the project, like many, was in August, I believe, and based on what I can glean from my predecessor's records, he started receiving notice that the project was ready to proceed in late spring, early summer, June, May range of last year. So, you know, I can't speak to all the communication lines between 2016, when the petition was first initiated by the township board at that time, at the staff level, and to today, but you know, I think the assessment process could have started earlier if the communication was there that the project was nearing the time to proceed with construction. And that would have given more time to do this. But this is the normal process, to go through 2 public hearings, 2 perspective roles preceding the public hearing, and to have residents come in and meet one-on-one with staff to go over the unique parcel and the unique factors to each parcel. That's just far more efficient than detailing a document for all 335 parcels.
So what I also heard was this is a normal process used by national standards, and one of the comments or questions was, how can we determine this is a fair and reasonable process?
Yeah, Spicer Group was selected because they have done drain assessments here in Ingham County and across the state of Michigan. So they were selected for their expertise in this area of setting special assessment roles. So, like, for instance, the acreage question, should we use GIS acreage or should we use the assessing records? Assessing roles all across the state use either or. You obviously have to pick one. But again, we still have to use GIS mapping to rely on what percentage of the parcel is in the drain boundary for those that stagger the drain boundary line. Drain boundary line was another big one. I'm actually going to pull up